Welcome to Gracefully Graying. I'm your host, Attorney Henry Gornbein. Today on Gracefully Graying, I'm pleased to welcome my guest, Megan Thongkham from the Las Vegas, Nevada offices of Lipson Neilson, as we discuss issues involved with condo living and homeowners associations. This is a critical topic, especially in light of the Florida condo tragedy. And I might mention the fact that when you're thinking of homeowners associations, it's just not only condos. There are so many communities throughout much of our country, especially in retirement areas such as Florida, such as Nevada, such as Arizona, where you live in single family homes, but you're part of a homeowners association. So we're dealing with millions of people who are involved. Welcome, Megan. First of all, tell our viewers a little bit about your background and your areas of expertise.
Sure. Good morning, Henry, and thanks for having me on the show. My background is insurance defense. I practice primarily in commercial litigation and what we call HOA law. So representing homeowners associations as their general counsel, defending them in lawsuits filed by third parties or homeowners and unit owners and condominium complexes. And I do a little bit of securities work, but primarily it's commercial lit and HOA law.
Megan, what is a homeowners association or HOA?
That's a great question. So at its core, a homeowners association is a nonprofit private organization that runs a group of properties. So it could be single family homes in a particular neighborhood, or it could be every unit within a high-rise condominium. The homeowners associations are organized under the Uniform Common Interest Ownership Act, and they're generally instituted at the time of construction. So when the developer is building out a community, they will form a homeowners association that will be run by the developer or the declarant for a certain period of time. And then when people start buying the homes, control of the homeowners association is then transferred by statute to the homeowners, who then run the community on their own with a volunteer board and typically with the help of a licensed community manager.
Megan, are there different types of HOAs, homeowners associations?
Yes, absolutely there are. So we talked a little bit about the difference between you can have a homeowners association for a condominium complex. You can also have a homeowners association for single family homes. So I'm sitting in my house right now, and I live in a homeowners association, but it's called a landscape maintenance association. So we pay assessments each month, but we only pay to maintain the common areas. We don't pay to have people tell us what color we can paint our house. Nobody cares what weeds are in our yard. We only pay for the maintenance of our common areas. Most homeowners associations control almost everything that you do within your community. So you pay an assessment to maintain the park or the little walkways. You pay for the community management service. It's all inclusive. And then some people have the added expense and the added responsibility of having what's called a master homeowners association or master community association. So masters associations are large associations kind of at the top of the pyramid. And what they do is they manage all of the smaller associations within that development. If you have planned communities, like here we have a community called Summerlin. Summerlin has master associations and then individual associations within each community.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the fact that Arizona, I'm sure Nevada as well, and Florida, there are these communities with 50, 100,000 people that are managed community that are aimed at people who are seniors 55 and over. So these would definitely fit under the umbrella of homeowners associations.
Absolutely. Absolutely, they would.
Can a homeowners association impose restrictions on how I, as a homeowner, can use and enjoy my property?
They can and they do. And it depends, on how strict your board is and what your governing documents say. But when you buy a property, in a common interest community, in an HOA or a condominium association, you are basically buying those restrictions. Here in Nevada, we have a mandatory disclosure statement that realtors have to give to people before they purchase their home. And it really is, it reads like a warning, Henry. It says, you know, beware, you are buying a home in a common interest community. Your board can control how you use and enjoy your property. And so the types of restrictions that an HOA can impose on you range from how many pets you can own, what color you can paint your house, whether you can modify the landscaping in your front yard, how many cars you can park on the street. If you live in a condo, it would be items like, you know, can you rent out the casita on the property and how much does that cost? Where do construction workers park if they're coming into the condo to come do work on your unit? If they park in the wrong place, your HOA can impose fines on you. And in condos, we often see fines and assessments and restrictions on the use of the pool, the gym. Here we have some fancy HOAs as they do in Florida and Arizona. So we have movie theaters and bowling alleys, and there are restrictions on the use of all of those amenities as well. So depending on where you live, it can be anything from you can't paint your house purple to you can't have more than one guest in your unit at any given time.
Who runs the homeowners associations and what are their responsibilities, Megan?
The HOAs are run by volunteer boards. The boards are members of the community and they are elected to their positions by the community in annual elections. They typically serve anywhere from, I would say on average, it's a 2-year term. I have seen longer terms in smaller associations. And all of their duties and responsibilities are set forth in the governing documents of the association. And that's really important. If you live in an HOA, you absolutely need to read your governing documents. That includes the covenants, conditions, and restrictions that are recorded against your property. That includes the bylaws, the rules and regulations. Those are all the items that your board will enforce. So getting back to your question, who runs it? The HOA is run by a volunteer board of your neighbors.
You know, it's interesting. I happen to live in a very small condo complex where there are 10 units. And we've had battles over things. Like at one point, my wife and I had a dog and one of the neighbors objected and their response was, well, you can let the dog out only between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. And, you know, we put in an all house generator. There was a battle over that. We expanded our deck. There was a battle over that. So it's like you give up a lot of rights when you are in a community where there's an HOA. So I can speak with personal experience. Let's go, Megan, to Florida. And horrible tragedy, a high-rise that I think was 40 years old collapses. I think the final toll was 99 people perished. Most of the people were in the demographics 55 and over, some were younger, but the vast majority were in the demographics of gracefully graying. And what are your thoughts on some of these issues? I mean, this is such a case in point, for lack of a better word.
I know it is really tragic. So I think we all know that the condo in Surfside had some significant construction problems. It was an old building. It was in dire need of repair. But going back a few years before the building collapsed, we kind of have to look at how it got into that condition in the first place. So let's kind of start with Florida law in general. Florida does not require homeowners associations to conduct what's called a reserve study. A reserve study is a study done every 3 to 5 years, typically. In Nevada, it's mandatory, it's statutory, but in Florida, it's not. And the reserve study is a physical inspection of the property by a reserve analyst who kind of gives the association an idea of what repairs might be coming up in the future of the community, what those repairs might cost, other issues with the physical property itself. And the point of the reserve study is to allow the HOA to set aside adequate, liquid cash reserves to make those repairs and to take care of the building and the property, or if you're in a single family home, the community at large for a long period of time. So Florida does not require that study be done. It's one of about 6 states that does not require it. So that's, I think, in my opinion, one of the first problems. The second problem that Florida has, and we don't have this here in Nevada, Florida also allows HOAs to waive what normally is a statutory obligation to set aside cash reserves in their reserve fund, their reserve account. So HOAs have 2 types of accounts generally. You have an operational budget, right? An operational account, and that takes care of your day-to-day maintenance, the things that are expected, right? So a pool chair needs replacement, some carpet needs replacement, maybe there's an upgrade in a dog park, that kind of thing. Your reserves are supposed to account for more of the unexpected expenses, right? There's a natural disaster and you need some structural repairs to your building. You have construction defects and your construction defect settlement doesn't cover everything. So in that case, you pull from your reserve fund. In Florida, they have no reserve study, so they don't necessarily know how much money they need for the next 10 years to keep their community running. And they have volunteer homeowners associations who are not setting aside cash reserves to pay for necessary repairs and unexpected maintenance.
Megan, I'm thinking about the fact that the tragedy occurred, partly, I guess, through neglect, through ignoring things like, we don't know all the answers. And also in Florida, you have unusual conditions because things are built on sand. And especially if you're on the Gulf or the Atlantic, you don't have the steady foundations. You've got a lot of issues with regard to erosion and flooding. And so someone, let's say, is reaching retirement age and has their dream place, whether it's in Florida or anything, they spend $500,000 or $300,000 or $1 million on a condo. But that's just the beginning, because in this tragedy, the assessments that hadn't been paid totaled $15 to $20 million, I believe. So you could have a $400,000 condo and owe a couple $1 million.
That is absolutely correct. And I believe in Florida, this is true, and it would be true generally speaking. That's called a special assessment. It's above and beyond what you pay monthly. A special assessment is put on the community when the association has an expense that they absolutely cannot cover, like a $15 million, $20 million construction repair. And the board, the association has the power to say, you as a unit owner are now going to pay, $55,000 as a special assessment to contribute to this repair. And there really isn't a lot you can do about it. There are different administrative processes. You can object to the board's decision. You can go, in Nevada, you would go to the real estate division and potentially ultimately get it before a court. But your options are really limited, particularly when your community has a need for the repair and there just isn't enough money. And if you don't pay that assessment, either because you absolutely cannot pay, right? You're not financially viable, or you just disagree and you don't think you should have to, the HOA can come after you and they can lien your property for the unpaid assessment.
But in this case, and I think this is a warning for anyone who's considering buying a condo, especially as a retirement home, as a second home, it's like, if you don't understand these things, if you're pouring a lot of money into a condo and find out that you may be hit with not only just thousands, but it could be hundreds of thousands of special assessments and you can't afford it, I think these are things that those of us who are gracefully graying, and really anyone, should be cognizant of. This is really an
Absolutely.
important issue if you're thinking of buying a condo or another residence in an HOA.
Absolutely.
Though it seems it's a bigger problem in a high rise than it would be with freestanding homes, because the cost can't be that high. Would that be a valid observation, Megan?
I think generally speaking, that's probably true. You know, every once in a while we have an association that has single family homes, but some elaborate pool and common area that requires a lot of maintenance, or they have a park that they built with trees that are causing root issues that are pushing the sidewalks up and cause problems. But generally, condos are more prone, I would say, to having large special assessments against the community. Now, one exception, Henry, is if your HOA is in a lawsuit, they're being sued by someone, and a judgment is entered against the HOA for whatever it is, right? It could be a unit owner suing the HOA for a violation of the governing documents, or it could be a bank suing the HOA on a super priority lien issue. If a judgment is entered against your HOA, whether it's a condo or a single family home, that judgment can be paid via special assessment against the homeowners.
So you're involved in a lot of this litigation. So what are typical risks that those of us who are in HOA should be cognizant of? Or should worry about?
If you're going to look, maybe we can start with this. If you're thinking about buying in a homeowners association, there are some things you can do to protect yourself and to give yourself a little bit more information going into the sale. The first thing you'll want to do is make sure that you have received and read a copy of the CC&Rs before you've purchased the property. The CC&Rs are recorded with the state, but your realtor and your association should be able to provide you a copy free of charge. And they tell you everything that the association can do, your rights, the association's rights, your obligations, rules for special assessments. It's really a guide for homeowners to know what could possibly happen while I'm living here. The second thing you want to do is make sure you know if there's any pending litigation involving your association. And you can generally do that by asking for what's called a litigation disclosure letter. The litigation disclosure letter will just generally tell you if your HOA is involved in any lawsuits. The third thing you can do, if you live in a state where there's a lot of construction defect litigation, you can ask for the construction defect notice. Here it's NRS Chapter 40. So you can ask for the Chapter 40 notice to tell you what defects are in your home. And that will give you an idea of, particularly if you live in a condo, what repairs might be coming and what those repairs could potentially cost. And those are the things I would recommend you do if you haven't already purchased.
So that's important, I think, because more and more of us are moving, especially as we're aging, into HOAs, whether it's a freestanding residence or a condo or a high rise. So you're really giving important advice to would-be buyers and would-be homeowners.
Yes, and actually I forgot something really important. You should check and see if the HOA has recorded a lien against the property. If the prior owner is delinquent on their assessments or has some unpaid special assessment, generally the HOA will record a lien. Depending on where you live, it could be a sub or a super priority lien. But you'll want to know that ahead of time so that you don't walk into your new home all excited to be in the community and then get a letter from your HOA saying, welcome to the community and you owe us $26,000.
Well, shouldn't that be an title search that would be done as part of any purchase agreement?
It should be in a title search, yes, but you would be shocked how many times somebody misses it or doesn't understand how the lien works in that particular state. Nevada, again, is a super priority state. We just finished, I would say, close to 5 years of litigation over whether an HOA's assessment lien took priority over the mortgage. There were hundreds of thousands of cases filed here in state and federal court. We were getting decisions all over the board federal court decisions were different than state court decisions. It was really a legislative disaster, in my opinion, and ate up so much money from both the plaintiffs and the defense for a long period of time because nobody knew how the lien worked. The statute wasn't clear. And the banks were coming in and saying, you know, you can't take this property from us because you sold it at a non-judicial foreclosure sale for $6,000. And the HOAs were saying, well, yes, we can. Here's the statute. So
what was the ultimate result, Megan?
I'm sorry?
What was the ultimate result? Who has priority? The bank?
Oh,
Homeowners association?
it's hard to say because we're still coming out with different decisions depending on which judge you get. But generally speaking, the banks were able to get the properties back from the third parties who purchased them at the non-judicial foreclosure sales.
Megan, my homeowners association has fined me. How can I dispute the fine?
Great question. Again, you're going to have to look at your rules and regulations, your bylaws. Generally, what you do is you write a letter to the HOA or the management company and you ask for a hearing. And the hearing is confidential. It's not in front of your entire community. It's just in front of the board. And you can go in and you can present your case, bring photographs, statements, whatever it is that you need, and you can ask them to reduce or waive the fine.
Megan, what are the general pros and cons of living in an HOA?
So I think if you are, 50 plus, and there are a lot of benefits to living in an HOA, particularly in a condo. You pay a monthly or quarterly assessment, and then you have a property that's beautifully maintained. You don't have to do a lot of maintenance. You don't have to worry about a crazy neighbor moving in and painting their house bright purple. And so there are a lot of securities involved with an HOA. And along with those securities come the use of many nice amenities, pools, gyms, casitas, other common areas. And I think if you have a young family, or if you're looking to sort of lead a quiet, nice life in retirement, those are the kind of amenities that you might be interested in.
You see, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Megan, do you see homeowners associations as the trend for those of us who are 50 and over or have aging parents?
I do. Yes, I absolutely do. I would say, I haven't really done a study to show the demographic of the HOAs that I do work for, but I will tell you, as far as the people serving on my boards, either as in my role as defense counsel or as their general counsel, they are generally 50 plus. They are retirees or quasi-retirees who are invested in their community and have the time to dedicate to running the association.
That's important. We've talked about some examples of restrictions, but what are some other examples that we haven't covered regarding restrictions, things that you give up other than being able to paint your house an absurd color if you live in a homeowners association community?
So if you live in a condominium, one of the issues that comes up regularly is when an HOA is trying to do essentially like a facelift on the building, right? So let's say, Henry, you purchased a unit in this beautiful luxury condominium complex, and you purchased the unit specifically because you liked the way the condo was designed, the hallways, the decor, everything. Your HOA can come in and completely revamp those common areas without your input. They can say, we're going to redesign the floors. We're going to take out all of this marble and we're going to replace it with, stamped concrete. And really, the board has wide discretion to make those types of decisions without any input from the community. So the very reason that you bought in that community could be something that changes over time. Generally, the complaints that we see from people are the smaller issues, right? It's not being able to own more than 2 pets, not being able to have more than 2 cars. It's really not the stereotypical, I want to paint my house purple stuff. But we do see a lot of people complaining that they can't use the pool at a certain hour, or they can't have a party at a certain hour. Those types of things, they seem small, but when you have someone knocking on your door and saying, you know, we're going to fine you $150 unless you move your car from in front of your home, people get upset. Sometimes it's decor. A lot of my older clients, they want to put certain flags out front or decorations. Many HOAs prohibit political signs, prohibit certain types of decorations. American flags almost always can be put out, so that's never an issue. Here's another good one. If you have a property where part of your yard is owned by the HOA, it's a little bit of an unusual situation, and you have beautiful trees in your front yard, the HOA can come cut those trees down. And there isn't much you can do about it because that property belongs to the HOA.
So there are a lot of, I mean, there are pros and cons. I mean, you have all the amenities taken care of. You have a lot of amenities that you wouldn't have if you were just living in a single home in a regular city or subdivision, but you also give up certain rights. And
Exactly.
these are important distinctions for our viewers. We have a little more than a minute left. What I'd like you to do is really summarize and give us some takeaways that are important that we've covered and that are especially important for those of us who are gracefully graying or have aging parents before we sign off, Megan.
Okay, so I think if you are living in an HOA or a condominium right now, be involved in your community. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to run for the board, but go to the meetings, listen to your board, find out what's happening, and be actively involved in running and managing the place where you live, your home. And that will give you a little bit more control over what's happening to you. If you know what's going on, all the information, the business of the association, those are public records. You can walk down to the management company and ask for copies. You can walk down to the assessor's office and get a copy of the CC&Rs. The more you educate yourself on your community, the better likelihood you'll have of maintaining a healthy, happy, peaceful lifestyle in that community.
Knowledge is power, Megan. And this is such an important topic and a topic that most people really are unaware of. So I want to thank you for being our guest on Gracefully Growing, Megan. I look forward to doing other shows with you because there are so many other issues. And I want to thank our viewers for watching Gracefully Growing. Thank you, and be sure to watch this video on our YouTube channel and visit and share our Gracefully Growing website. Thank you again, Megan.
Thank you, Henry.